Hello there, can't believe we're here on another Friday. So nice to see everybody today. Hope you're all really well. We're on with tag number 16, which is just crackers that we're just running through the year so quickly. Hope everybody's having a good holiday, whether you're in the middle of the holiday, beginning, end, whichever it might be. Welcome to tag number 16. So, as usual, every fourth tag we work with a stitch. So we're going to look at a seeding stitch today because I just thought it'd be just quite nice just to sit and just do something that's really simple, quite repetitive and quite therapeutic. So your choices this week are very, very simple. You just need a backing fabric and a thread. That's it, and I'll talk about the circles in a little bit. So I've pulled out this gorgeous purple fabric, but actually when I pulled it out of my basket I was looking at it at the other side, and I actually prefer the other side to this. Now because we're going to seed it, it's probably going to be better to have a plain backing fabric this time. We're also going to use some cotton wadding or some backing. So the inspiration that I've got from the tag is one of the double pages that we did in the book, which was the circles, which I absolutely loved, and I loved this creating this negative shape. So this is what we're going to do this week with the seeding stitch to leave a circle of the fabric. If you want to use patterned fabric, you totally can do, because it could be that there's a flower in there or a pattern. You might even end up doing applique circles, but I'm just going to focus on the negative because I just want to sit and do some stitching today. So I have got my piece of fabric cut so that it is the same, so it'll fit, sorry, onto my tag. What I'm then doing is I'm putting it onto the wadding, but I've made the wadding a little bit bigger because as you stitch, it's probably going to scrunch in a little bit, and it just means that when I take the pins out at the end, I can then trim it rather than trimming it and it all going a little bit distorted. So I've just pinned it around the edge. Then to create my circles, there are loads of different ways that you could do this. You could tack on some buttons, you might decide to draw circles on, however you want to do, but I've just got some of the rubber rings that I used when we were doing the blanket stitch, and all I'm going to do is just with a thread is I'm going to place them where I'd like them, where I want the circles to be, and all I'm going to do is just tack them down. So I'm doing them in a thread that stands out because I will be cutting these off afterwards. So this is just my guide, but like I say, you could use anything. You can draw around something. I've done it before where you tack on buttons and then take the buttons off. It might be that when you do the circles you may decide that you quite like them and you want to leave them on. So if you remember, I'm just giving you the ideas, the challenges, and feel free to make your own adaptations as you would like to. Hopefully by now, if you've been really getting into the tags, you've subscribed to my channel. If you can subscribe, that would be fantastic. It's free to subscribe. You've got access to everything. It just means that in your feed it'll pop up when I've got a new video out, and it also just helps support me doing all these projects really online and keeping them free. Okay. Right, so I've tacked those on. There we go. So I've just tacked them on just in 3 different places, and then just on the back I will just tack that on. Okay, right, somebody is at my front door, so I'm going to pause it and then I shall come back. Okay, no idea what happened then. So hopefully we're all okay. Either that or you've just heard me yelling at my kids downstairs. Right, so I've tacked my circles on so that I know where they are, and I'm not going to stitch inside those, so I'm stitching around the edge. Okay, So I've got my thread, so I want a contrasting colour, so it's going to stand out. And then what I would suggest you do is do a tiny running stitch. So a seeding stitch are just lots of straight stitches. They're in lots and lots of different directions, so that they are random. Well, I say random. You have to try and get them random. But actually randomness is really, really hard. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to do a little stitch. So I'm going around the edge of my circle. Okay, some of them I'll do along the edge, then I'll do the odd one just going out at an angle. Just so that when you take them off, the seeding stitch, it just then seems to stop at the circle rather than being this definitive line of stitching. So my stitches are about 2 or 3 millimeters. And what you want to try and do with a seeding stitch is keep all your stitches exactly the same size. Oops. Okay, there we go. Oop. So because they're near each other, we'll go across to that one. And you want to fill in absolutely every gap, every tiny bit. So I'm just going to come back round this way. Some of the stitches might be slightly smaller than others, but I wouldn't go any bigger than a couple of millimeters. Now I'm just using 2 colours, so I'm just going for a backing colour and then the colour of my stitch. It's really nice to do this in a variegated thread, so that as you're stitching, especially if you start and keep it in one area and move as you're going along, so as the colours then change on your variegated thread, you'll get a variegation on your piece of work. Now the idea of putting the wadding behind is we're sort of quilting it a little bit, so hopefully by the time we get it stuck down, the circles should puff up a little bit. You're going to take your stitching right to the edge of your piece. Okay, so obviously this is going to take me quite a while to do, but hopefully you can see what we're doing. It's probably going to be quite a short video today, because it is just going to be a case then of me sitting and stitching. Not quite decided yet what I'm going to do with my edges, because on the book I did quite like the folded over, so a bit like using bias binding, making your own by stitching and folding over. I quite like that idea, but what I don't want to end up doing is covering up too much of my stitching. Could just run a blanket stitch down the edge, or you could just trim it off. So I'll have to see what it looks like when I take the circles off. So hopefully you're getting a little bit of an idea. If I come out this section here, so that you can see what I'm doing. So try and change the direction of your stitch. One of the easiest ways to do that, I usually find, is just to keep rotating your piece of work. Keep turning it around. You do end up looking at it in different directions, which does help with that randomness. Sometimes if you're looking at it straight on all the time, you end up stitching in the same direction all the time. So sometimes I'll just do single stitches if I want to do that definite bit, but when I'm starting off in an area, that needle's pins coming out, so I tend to do I go in and then just come up somewhere else, and then again go in, come up somewhere else, and it gives you a few stitches just to start off with. And then if you turn your piece round, yeah, you can then start filling in the gaps. Don't worry if the wadding comes through, you'll be able to pull that off as you go along. So I am going to take my stitching right to the edge of my fabric. So this is something, this particular one is just something nice to do. Just go and grab yourself a cup of tea, put on, I don't know, something to listen to, or if the weather's nice, save it for a nice day. This is lovely to go and sit and do out in the garden. Okay, I'll try and get this little bit done here. So I've got quite a few stitches going horizontal, so I need to get a few little ones filled in. I'm using a Pearl 12 thread for this, but again, use whatever you've got. You don't have to use the same things that I'm using. I know a lot of people have been messaging me to ask me what sorts of threads I use. Use anything that you've got. I know some people have got some beautiful hand-dyed threads. You may have threads left over from a previous project. Just use anything. And even though I am doing just one colour, I'm doing one colour because I just want this to really stand out. There's no reason why you couldn't use loads of colours. Okay, right, I think I'm going to stop about there. It's probably going to be the quickest video I've done. Keeping it simple. I just think it's nice for us to have some weeks a little bit more simple, and next week's I might make that a bit more challenging. I've got a really nice idea for next week's tag. It's something that I've wanted to have a go at and I've seen before, but I've never really had the opportunity to use it. I think that's one of the things that I'm really liking about these tags, is you can either do something that's familiar, something that you've done before, or it just gives you an opportunity just to have a go at something new. So I'm always on the eye out for new ideas and new techniques, as well as doing the old familiars, things that we're used to doing and used to having a go at, because I am conscious of the fact that quite a few people that are doing the tags are new to embroidery, so I don't want to make it too complicated, so I'm keeping simple as possible. But for those of you that are a bit more experienced, I suppose, in embroidery, you can push this however you want to. I did think about doing this and having it all French knots. I might save that for later. That would be a lot of French knots. It would be nice to do. My friend Rona would be in 7th heaven, doing hundreds and hundreds of French knots. Right, okay, so if I'm going to leave it at that for now, so hopefully you can sort of see what I'm going to be doing. So I'm going to fill the outside of all these circles with teeny tiny stitching, and then I'll cut the threads on these to take them off, so you'll be left with the circles and the stitching that's going to go all the way around the edge. So I look forward as usual to your interpretation of this, and I will see you again next week. See you soon. Bye.